So I thought to start our conversation, it would be really good to have Tim and Lynn do a brief introduction. So Lynn, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for inviting me, TJ and Jeremy. So good to be with you today. My name is Lynn Iovino. I work with Azure Acres Recovery Center in Sebastopol. I have a passion for helping families, women, and people just find a path to freedom. And it's through my own recovery journey and own experiences that has led me to be able to help families, be able to speak the truth about my own journey. And so that's why I'm here today, to join in the conversation. I'm currently the outreach coordinator at Azure Acres. I help families get into treatment. I help plan for discharge. I run the alumni program, so I celebrate them once they get out of treatment. I help with referrals. I work with the clinical team. So I'm just super thankful for this opportunity to give back in this kind of way and love what I do. Absolutely love what I do. So that's me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lynn. Tim, we'll go ahead and pass it to you.
Okay. Hey, good morning, everybody. Timothy Fitzgerald. I'm the clinical director here at Azure Acres. I've been here about 2 years. And about a year ago, we brought conscious recovery to Azure Acres, and it's turned us all around. So we just love it, and the opportunity to speak with TJ personally and share our experience with him is just, it's incredible. I've been in the field 36 years, my own recovery, 36 years. And it started getting stale, to tell you the truth. The same programs doing the same thing, you know, individual, group, family therapy, relapse prevention, addiction education, AA, NA, life ring, yoga, acupressure, acupuncture, hypnotherapy, neurotherapy, on. And never take the clients deep. Never talk about abuse. Never talk about neglect. Never talk about trauma. You could never do that, because the old school way of thinking was, if you talk about it, you're not in a right place for the client. The client will overwhelm you. The issue will be too much. And the way conscious recovery works is, why not talk about it in a safe environment that we provide, where they have love and support around them 24/7? Why not talk about it here, where they can heal and change and become who they are, the beautiful person that they are? So I'm delighted to be here. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tim. That is really, really good to hear. I'm so glad that conscious recovery has been such a support to you in your treatment. And it's a really good segue to our topic today, which is the power of authenticity, which is something I absolutely love exploring. And TJ, I wondered if you wanted to kind of kick us off with a little bit of your insight or wisdom into what authenticity really is, especially in relation to a recovery setting.
Yeah, thank you. And I want to speak to what Tim said. I mean, it just really warms my heart to hear you say that. And it is a perfect bridge into authenticity, because, you know, having worked in treatment myself for not as long as you have, but also been in recovery for 35 years, 34, let me do the math right, 34 years myself, I do realize the importance of getting down to the deeper root causes. And, you know, like you said, so many treatment programs, and of course, really well-intentioned. It's not, no, I don't think anyone is saying, let's give someone mediocre treatment. I don't know.
No.
I think people are in this field. The people that I know that are in this field is because we have a passion for helping people. And many of us, not all of us that work in the field, but many of us have gone through our own addiction, and we really feel like we want to share so freely what we've been given. And I noticed that a lot of the modalities and a lot of the treatment programs weren't going deep because it didn't feel safe to do so. And the reason that that is a bridge into authenticity is that there are layers to authenticity. A lot of times we think it means telling the truth. Well, if authenticity was just telling the truth, we would have that down, especially in our culture right now. Everyone's firing their truth at each other, right? But we're talking about something much deeper, and that is getting in touch with our authentic self, our beingness, our essential self. And the reason it's important in this beginning of the conversation is in conscious recovery, the foundational principle is underneath all your addictive behavior is an essential self that is whole and perfect. When we recognize that, it becomes safer to work with the trauma because I realize I'm not my past. It does not have to define me. I've been running from my trauma, running from my shame, and running from my sense of disconnection for so many years. That's simply what addiction is. So as we recognize there's a place within us that is unharmable, then we can start to turn toward some of the trauma, disconnection, and shame and actually begin to really heal.
Beautiful. I love that so much, TJ, especially the piece about the essential nature, our essential selves being unharmable. I think that that is really a fresh perspective. And Lynn, I'm curious in your work with clients where you see authenticity really playing a role in their recovery.
Yeah, definitely. So authenticity to me, for me, let me just go back a little bit. Authenticity, like I think when I was a child, I over-identified with some of my mom's stuff. And because of that, I learned how to put on a fake face for many, 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 many years. And a woman in a meeting said one time, she's all, I've been angry my whole life. And at that moment, my life changed because she gave me permission to be to take off that mask, if you will. And so I shared a little bits of my story with the clients about if you want to get loaded, please speak up. If you want to share a secret, let's do it now. And I definitely share just little bits of my dirty secrets. In other words, of some of the things, some of the places I went when I was drinking and using to help them see that it's okay. And I asked them to help me make a safe space in that lecture room. So we create a safe space and I share a secret, and then that's how, does that make sense, Jeremy? Yeah. It opens people up when you're able to talk with clients about a little bit of your recovery journey and the things that you've learned and grown from.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Lynn. That's beautiful. Tim, you've been in the field for a long time and in recovery for a long time too. And so same question, how do you see authenticity playing a role in the healing process?
Okay, so the difference is that before we had conscious recovery in any of my experience where I've worked, you would ask the person to do like maybe work a first step or a second step or a third step in the 12-step model program. And that was great. And there was a lot of healing behind that. But what became apparent to me was that people were looking outside of themselves for the solution. And the way that addicts and alcoholics do is they think the solution is in the drugs or the alcohol outside of themselves. So they're seeing themselves as imperfect. Something's wrong with me. I need to get a fix outside of myself. And I learned for myself, my own experience, is that as a child, I was perfect. Like I was perfect. I came into the world perfect. And then the messages from outside of me caused me to say, I'm not perfect, I'm imperfect. And then I'm broken. I'm identified as a victim. Things will never change. It'll never get any better for me. And I can't talk about those things that made me that way. With conscious recovery, we provide the safe space for them to indeed talk about those things that made them that way, to identify that it's not really who you are. You are that perfect person. You've just learned coping skills that are ineffective, that don't work anymore, and you have to learn new coping skills that are effective. And it turns out that those coping skills you had all along. Like you came that way. You just were misdirected or adapted a lifestyle behaviors that just don't work. And so you find it in yourself, like I am perfect just the way I am, and I have help, And in the therapy field, if I disclose something very deep about myself, and this is frowned upon as well a lot with treatment programs, don't talk about yourself. But if I'm doing a group and I want the clients to really talk about deep emotional stuff, they'll go as deep as I want to go. So if I go into my childhood trauma, for example, and I let that out, and they see that, you know, I'm a successful person in recovery and I've come a long way and da-da-da-da, they get hope that maybe if I talk about myself too, I could be not so much me, but I could be like, you know, successful and I could be happy. How about that for a change? Happy. Lynn talked about anger. I was angry my entire life. I was angry. I was running from anger, using drugs and alcohol to hide that, make myself feel better, eventually not feel anything. Conscious recovery is an effective way to get the clients to learn new coping skills that effectively help them love themselves, accept themselves, and take off the victim coat or the identity of the victim. Like, you're a powerful being when you realize that you're perfect just the way you are.
Wow, that is really beautiful, Tim. Thank you so much. And I have to say, having been in a few of the conscious recovery groups, specifically the Authenticity group, I love what you're saying, where the facilitator will offer something that's true for them. And what I love about conscious recovery's perspective on authenticity is that on the surface, we are one way. There is this version of ourselves, but everything that's underneath, everything we kind of tuck away in the shadow that we don't want people to know about, that's the good stuff. And we tuck it away in fear of how other people would respond to it. They wouldn't want to be our friends. They don't want to work with us anymore. They would never want to be around us if you really knew me. Mm-hmm. And I love that in conscious recovery, through the lens of authenticity, we can recognize that we're all putting things in the shadow collectively. And when we start talking about it, we actually create a space that is safe and loving and encouraging. And we say, wow, like these things I used to really hate about myself, because I was afraid of how people will react. Well, they have those things too. So it's safe for me to be who I really am. And so, TJ, I want to pass it to you and kind of look at maybe where that came from, where the perspective that you took on authenticity came from.
Wow, I see 3 different pathways. So let's see, I might jump down a few of them. When I started working in the field, my educational background is through spirituality. So my degree is in spiritual counseling, spiritual leadership, and then ultimately an ordained minister through the Agape International Spiritual Center. So I did come in with my own recovery, but also this kind of spiritual piece, and authenticity is at the root of that. So when I first started working in treatment, I was just reminding myself that before it was called conscious recovery, it was called authenticity groups. So I had created this 12-week series that obviously evolved over the years, but ultimately I became the spiritual director of a treatment program. And I was reflecting, Tim, when you were talking, and Lynn, you as well, of how much I loved being immersed in residential treatment. I was there full time. I saw every client once a week individually. I was doing these groups, and I was reminded, and I think, Tim, it was when you were talking, that each week I'd meet with them. So on the 4th week, and usually that was the last week because people were 30 days, I would say to the client at the beginning of the last session together, what is one secret that you thought you'd never tell me or anyone else before leaving treatment? And they would pause, sometimes shocked that I was going to ask that, but then there would be something that would get revealed. We'd still have a week or 2 to help, have them work with that. But so many of us as human beings are carrying secrets, right? And the truth is, those are kind of running the show. Because, Lynn, as you said, and Tim, as you said, we do come into this world as these beautiful, perfect beings. And Lynn, in your case, you picked up a lot of roles that you were playing from your mother, right? And we come to planet Earth and start believing we're broken and damaged, and that's at the root of addiction. 100% of the clients I've worked with, 100% of the people I worked with earlier in my recovery in 12-step, we all felt broken and damaged. And so we are looking for something outside. The other, I just wanted to honor someone too. As you were talking, Tim, I was thinking about Richard Litfield. I don't know if you all know who he is, but he passed away maybe a year or two ago. And he used to open his psychodrama groups. He'd come in, he was very dramatic. The clients would be in a U and he'd bust through the doors and he'd say, I'm a New Yorker, I'm a junkie, and I'm a PhD. So what do you think of that? And he would always start, and I think it was PhD, but he would always start his groups with telling a little bit of his own story. And the clients would just be like, and he would just, boom, let me tell you who I really am. He's like, yeah, I've got the degrees, but I've also got the street smarts. And he was just a brilliant example of a breath of fresh air in the field where he was willing to just get down and be open. And there was a degree of safety that got created. Now, I don't have that exact same style. My delivery system is different, but we arrive at the same place because, as Lynn said, we create a safe container and give people permission to talk about this stuff. It's so interesting because the stuff isn't even true. It's not who they are, but there's something about talking about it that allows them to release that so they can get back to the essential self.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you, TJ. And Tim, that is a beautiful segue to my next question for you, and that is, in working with clients over the years, how have you seen a shift in them when they actually do work with authenticity? What do you see actually shift and take place when we do get down into the shadow and the stuff they've tucked away?
Sure. So without conscious recovery, the way people would come into treatment, and first of all, a lot of them don't want to be there, and they're doing everything in their power to show you that they don't want to be there. Then eventually they want to be there, and then eventually they're afraid to leave. And so for those, let's say a block of 30 days, it's all about the 30-day treatment. And counselors would high-five each other. Great, we got them through 30 days of treatment. This is awesome. And it's challenging to do that. I don't want to take anything away from that. My focus is more on, what are you going to do next? Because we got you in a controlled environment where you can't do drugs and alcohol, and you're loved and supported all around you. But what are you going to do next? And if you don't do the inner work that conscious recovery helps you get to, you will bring the same person that you were coming in the door to the next place that you go, and the same thing will sprout. But if you do the inner work and get rid of the core false beliefs about yourself, not so much get rid of them, but see what they are, identify the ones that are not yours, that are false, that you've believed all your life, get more beliefs that are more supportive and loving. Through other of the weeks of conscious recovery, you develop a lot of self-love and a lot of self-care through this. And then carry that outside. What it's going to sprout is very different. Say someone went to 4 or 5 different rehabs in their lifetime. Each rehab that they went to, they're bringing that thing that didn't work in the deepest part. So they're bringing that same self. And they can look good in rehab. Like, imagine an elm tree, right? You prune the branches, you make it look nice, right? And it does look nice. And maybe they're a role model client, and you tell another client, you should talk to that person because they're motivated and wonderful. But if they don't do the deep work and they leave, the pruning and all that fades. It just does. It just fades. Reality hits them from all sides. And in conscious recovery, because you've done the deep work, let's call it a seed, and you've opened that seed and you've looked at it and said, this doesn't work, this is not mine, never was, I just need to learn how to let it go, teach me how to do that. And you just grow this beautiful other, let's call it a flower, if you will. I mean, it's just different. The experience you have after treatment is very different than if you don't do the deep work. That I don't know how to say it any other way.
Yeah, that's perfect. And Lynn, that leads me to you, which is, you're working with a lot of clients after treatment in their continuing care and alumni groups and stuff. And so have you seen a shift from in your work as their alumni coordinator, having done conscious recovery and delved into this authenticity? Do you see that in their continuing care?
the clients who are ready, there's some of them are ready, and some of them you just know when they're ready, when they're done, and they become totally willing. They say something clicks with them. Something clicks. I had a client in my office the other day, and she did some work. She did some deep work, and she got to the bottom of that deep work and realized that she's an amazing human being. She's amazing. And so when she said one negative thing about herself, I said, now you have to say 3 positive things about yourself. And she was able to spout those off like really, really quickly. And I think with conscious recovery, if we're talking about authenticity and we're talking about getting to the core beliefs of who we are, really the essential part of who we are is love, right? You are not your addiction. You're not the things you did. That was your addiction. We start with self-esteem. We start with making beds. We start with brushing teeth. We start with, and so building on that and then getting some truth telling with other people, like talk to your peers. So to answer your question, you see it in their eyes and you hear it in their voice. They're no longer shrinking down to make other people feel comfortable. They're standing up and they're walking in truth. You see it in their eyes, you see it in their walk, you see it in their speech. They're like, I'm loving, I'm kind, and that's what happens. And you can call it a spiritual awakening. You can call it to getting to the authentic self. You can call it, but you'll see it. You'll see people like crouch down to make other people feel comfortable. And like my motto is if we're perfect and whole beings and we can get to the core belief of that, then stand up and speak your truth, right? Regardless if anybody else is going to feel uncomfortable. Like if you've been changed by this situation or by this group or by this authentic group, stand up and be known, and some people aren't going to like it, and that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Lynn. And TJ, that's actually a burning question I have, and something that in my experience in residential treatment, something that came up for me often was a lot of resistance to the idea that we are whole and perfect. There is, in my experience, I remember very distinctly handing someone a copy of Conscious Recovery and saying, hey, I want you to read the back of this book really quick. And they read it and they said, that book isn't for me because that's not true for me. And so I'm curious, TJ, if there are people listening or watching that maybe also feel like that, what you would say to them.
I'll share my own story because I think it's really how I came to recognize or understand that within each of us is a whole and perfect essential self. I did not feel whole and perfect when I got into recovery. Jeremy, you've heard me tell this story so many times, but this wonderful woman, Mary Helen Brownell, came into my life. She was this incredible counselor and sober herself. What seemed like forever. She was 19 years sober, and I was like mind-blowing. But my mind was blown because I was 20, and I'm like, oh my God, you've been sober, and now, I meet so many people that, of course they say, God, you've been sober longer than I've been alive. And I'm like, I just feel old. I don't feel. But what happened for me is she would say in her beautiful Southern accent, darling, you're so precious. And I would recoil. I would sometimes literally feel sick to my stomach. I didn't know what was happening then, but I can recognize now that it had gotten so deeply into my unconscious and subconscious that I was damaged, that I was broken, that I was not good enough, I wasn't worthy, that those words couldn't even penetrate that. I would be like, ugh, I would push back. So over time, hearing that, I began to, because I had so much love and respect for her, I remember waking up one day and thought, if she sees me as precious, who am I not to? Because she's this incredible person. So when it comes to treatment, and I also want to just acknowledge Azure Acres, one of the oldest treatment programs on the West Coast, right? I mean, I think there's only one other program that is older, and it's like you guys have been doing phenomenal work for years. And I know Tim, you're being humble about, you know, like how great conscious recovery is, and it's a tool. But you guys were already doing and continue to do this incredible work with clients. The place has a beautiful energy. Your clinicians are really dedicated. Conscious recovery is a tool, and I want to be clear about that. Someone said to me, can someone get sober and stay sober on conscious recovery alone? And I said, I hope not, because you know, we have all these different aspects of ourselves, and like we use whatever works at the moment. So going back to whole and perfect, this is how it works for me. This is how I show up with it. You know, Tim, you referenced clients who are resistant. Well, I would guess most clients don't want to be there on some level, right? On some level. So if we as counselors, clinicians, and therapists can become curious about the part of them that wants to be there, even if it's this little tiny part, you know, if someone's presenting, I'm thinking of the archetype of the, you know, 23-year-old guy that's too cool to be there, you know, and maybe he's coming off of heroin, and there's a particular archetype. I'm going to guess that he's probably afraid to get vulnerable because he's probably been taught that he needs to be tough to survive. So that's a, you know, a coping mechanism, or as we call it, a brilliant strategy. So if we shift our focus from the behavior and start looking for the part of them that is whole and perfect, and the part of them that wants to get well, because I remember early in recovery, there was a part of me that wanted to resist it all, rebel from all of it, but there was also a part of me that really yearned for wholeness, right? Really yearns, and I was so hungry for it, but I was so afraid to let anyone know that, so I had all these walls. And so rather than trying to work with the walls, I sometimes will ask a client, well, is there a part of you that wants to be here? Let's talk to that part. And sometimes I'll have them have a conversation with the part of themselves that wants to get better. Really profound, right? So it also is exhausting trying to work with someone's strategies, or as they say, defense mechanisms. This work can be energizing when I'm like, I wonder what part of them wants to heal.
Beautiful. Thank you, TJ, so much. And Tim, another question I thought of while TJ was talking, something it reminded me of was the role of the counselor or the therapist or the clinician. And in your experience, what you see when you do come from a place of authenticity. You know, TJ and I speak to it often that viewing the clients as broken, it puts this huge burden on our shoulders that we have to fix them. And that's really heavy, and it's draining, and it can be a pretty heavy load to bear. So in your experience, Tim, what role has authenticity played in your role as the clinician to the clients?
Well, TJ touched on it. The part that a lot of programs that I've been in would focus on is the behavior of the clients, and they'd focus, and it's time consuming. It's emotionally wearing on the counselors and the staff as a whole. A lot of people get involved in this. Let's focus on the behavior. Let's focus on the behavior. What we try to do is focus on whatever piece or part or a tiny bit of them that wanted to come here in the first place. Because I get it. Some of them feel like my family forced me, my job forced me, the law forced me, etc. And we say, I get it, yeah, okay. But somewhere in there, you made a decision based on everything else, but somewhere in there is part of you that you made a decision to come here. Let's talk to that piece of you. So I do this little demonstration when I do lectures. I sit in a chair and I say, people come to Azure Acres or a treatment in general feeling like I am addiction. This is me. This is addiction. And what I try to do when I do this live demonstration, I get out of the chair and I say, I am me, and this is my addiction. We're going to go after this, but we need you to see that. You are not your addiction. You are you, the human with a disease of addiction, and we need you to help us fight it. Now, there's a part of you that came in here that was on that side of it. Let's talk to that person. Let's meet that guy or that girl. Let's have a conversation. Let's, we get it that there's all kinds of stuff you want to distract, and you've learned over the years, like if I'm loud, I get attention. If I slam doors, if we go after that, yeah, you can spin your wheels on that. You're not going to get anywhere. You're just not. let them slam the door, hold the line. Let them swear, hold the line. Let them walk away, hold the line. Eventually, it all settles down and you just have a conversation. I get it. You're angry, you're upset, something's bothering you. I want to talk to that part of you that wants to be here. Can we just visit for a second? Just talk to each other. And even the most resistant, I got to say, it's the truth. The most resistant clients will go there if you practice, if you're authentic yourself. Like if you're yourself, like I realize this is the issue that we got before us. I get it. And it's probably been their whole history in all the programs and all the life. They've been making noise and loud. And there's reasons behind that. Eventually we'll get there. But for this moment, let's talk about why are you here right now? Because I know, and you know, there's a part of you, both of us know that you want to be here. So let's talk. And it's really effective.
That's awesome. Yeah, thank you, Tim. And Lynn, I want to kind of shift gears just a little bit and talk about how Authenticities played a role in our own personal recovery, because I know, like for me, I spent the first couple of years of my own recovery really white knuckling it. I didn't drink and I didn't use drugs, but there was still this really, really deep disconnection between me and myself. And recovery communities, while they're incredibly supportive, I felt really torn because I didn't know where I belonged. And I felt like I was so out of alignment with my true self. And only years later did I really realize or bring awareness to the fact that there was a disconnection there. And that the disconnection was that I was being inauthentic. I was really people pleasing or kind of repeating, sayings or wordage from different recovery models to kind of walk the walk and talk the talk. But inside there was a little bit of a disconnection there. So, Lynn, if you're comfortable sharing, I'd be curious about the role Authenticities played in your recovery.
Yeah, thank you for going deep. Thank you, Tim and TJ. When you were speaking to that, I thought, is there still some parts of me that is inauthentic? Are there still some unhealed parts? And so I get to be curious about that even right now in this moment, right? So if we're talking, about what changed with that authenticity, I was hiding some stuff inside me. It was deep inside me from a little girl. I would hide out. I was full of shame about breathing. Like I wasn't even worthy of a seat. When somebody invited me into AA and NA, I just wasn't even worthy of that chair. And for somebody to know, like a sponsor, like a mentor, like a spiritual advisor, I've had those people in my life, in my journey, in my walk, and they have meant everything to me. And to me, it's like, how can somebody know everything about me and still love me, right? And so that's what I've gotten to experience with a spiritual advisor, with a sponsor, and to get down to me, it comes back to self-care. TJ told me one time, he said, you can do when we were talking about conscious recovery, we were doing a conscious recovery group and we were talking about self-care, and he said, you can do the, massages and you can do the nails and you can do all that stuff, but the real work is seeking outside help. And so for me, to get to the real authentic self in doing the self-care is, doing some therapy work, and going deep and finding out, that at the core of my being, I'm an amazing human being that just took on some identities and roles as a child from being around alcoholic and from seeing violence and from seeing men come in the home and all the things that I saw. I identified that as I'm a bad person. You know, like I'm not worthy. And so what I did with that is I sought out boys and drugs and alcohol, and then, you know, I went on to repeat the same, but didn't find out in hindsight till years later. So let me just kind of wrap this all in here. You know, forgiving myself, you know, forgiving my mother, you know, forgiving myself for creating the same trauma that I saw as a child with my own children, and then being the one to stand in the gap and saying, wait a minute, we're not going to do this anymore. We're going to stand up. We're going to get recovery. We're going to change the patterns of the history of the family lineage. That makes sense. And so now I can talk a little bit about my daughters are following suit. They're in recovery. They're both working with teenage adolescent girls who are in trouble. So I look at it as a ripple effect. You know, when I was drinking and getting loaded, I was causing chaos, tearing through people's lives. And, you know, I don't have to do that today. I may never see the depths of the damage that I caused, the scars on my kids' hearts from the stuff they had to go through. And today I don't have to do that. I know if I don't get loaded today, I will throw a pond in the recovery field. You know, so ponds, like they, you know, when you throw a rock in it, they kind of ripple out. So I know that I have a responsibility today to take care of myself, to do the self-care, to stand up for my recovery, to take that quiet time for me. And when I do all those things for me, I'm there for my clients. I'm there for my kids. Like, I'm the best woman that I can be. And conscious recovery, I just have to say, when we did the authenticity, TJ, and you came out and you trained us, and we were doing the circle about, if you knew me, you'd really know. If you knew me, you'd really know this about me. And one of my coworkers said, if you knew me, you knew that I scare myself sometimes with my depression. And like that, him saying that, I just love him so much more because of that. And so that's what conscious recovery can do. It can open people up with authenticity. So I hope I made sense. I know I kind of had a lot to say.
Beautiful.
It was good.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I want to kind of jump in for a moment for anyone who's watching, because we can talk about authenticity for hours, but what Lynn just did is demonstrated it. And that's really the power, right? Because I felt my heart just pouring open, and I was thinking as you were sharing, and this is what's important, and this is why we do it with conscious recovery, is as you were sharing about healing generational trauma, you didn't exactly use those words. I was thinking about the lineage on my dad's side of the family with sex addiction, and quite frankly, like the perpetrators that have lived in those generations. And what I took on because of that, and the shame I took on my dad's and my grandfather's and my great-grandfather's shame. Mm-hmm. And what you're talking about is so incredible, because as we move into the courage, because that's what it is, to be fully seen, you know, Brene talks about that, bringing our full self into the room, then what you just demonstrated, see, is so much more powerful than talking about it. That's why conscious recovery is experiential. It's not a teaching. It's a demonstration. It's an experience. We walk in the room and we have an experience of authenticity. And I've heard clients at the end of that group say, how the hell did that just happen? Right? It's like, oh my gosh, I just shared all of this. And then the last thing I want to say is, you talked about self-care, and books are funny. I remember in the mid 80s when I got sober, there was this book by Thomas More called The Care of the Soul. I never read that book because, quite frankly, his reading was so dense, but I remember having it sitting by my bed, and I would read the title and I would ask myself, am I caring for my soul today? And so his book, even though I never read it, has had a profound impact on me, simply because I've started asking my question. And it's true, we can have spa days and cucumbers and massages, but ultimately, am I caring for the deepest part of myself? That's true self-care. And Lynn, you demonstrated that so beautifully. So thank you for showing us and letting us feel what authenticity truly is.
Well, thank you, TJ.
Yeah, thank you both so much, Lynn. That was beautiful. And I have to agree, it was a perfect demonstration of authenticity. And as we come to a close, Tim, I was maybe going to see if there are people watching. I mean, TJ and I know people that are in recovery that watch these videos, and authenticity is touched on often, but I also feel like it's something that people struggle with, and it's something that I, for myself, I notice it goes in and out. I have to bring a really conscious awareness to it. And so, Tim, if there was a final thought you had for anybody watching who's maybe struggling with the process, maybe what you would offer them.
Sure. So in my field, I'm a clinical director, so I'm in charge of a bunch of counselors, and I train them and I coach them. I'm in charge of a bunch of clients, if you will, not in charge, but I supervise everybody, and I have to wear different hats. So how do you be authentic when you're wearing all these different hats? What's the true Tim, right? Like, what is that? So every now and then I'll take, like this morning, I took 7 clients who chose to volunteer to go on a hike in the wilderness, and they got to see the authentic me. I'll take the staff and we'll make loops around the building, up and down the hills, and I'm being authentic with the staff. And so there's a moment where you can take a break from the whole, I don't want to call it a rat race, because I love what I do. I absolutely love it. It's my passion. It's my calling, if you will. But the world keeps going. We got COVID now. We have fires. We have, addiction wearing its ugly head every day. So you have to, for me, I take a moment out of my day, throughout the day, and bring someone with me, because I think you need people, you need community, you need other souls to be with you and share the experience. I start my day, I come as soon as I enter the forest, I shut off my music, and I kind of zoom in, meditate all the way till I get to the door. And Azure Acres is in a beautiful forest, not on fire, no fire, it's fine. And I'm amazed, because I'm a city kid. I'm a poor kid, project kid, and I'm in a forest every day. And that's where I work, and that, it's just beautiful. And I work around beautiful people. So, but I still have responsibilities. So self-care, I can't do anything for anybody else if I don't take care of myself. And I also set the bar for the staff, if you will. Like, if I'm taking care of myself, I'm in my 50s and I have a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. About 5 years ago, I joined these 2 clean and sober hiking organizations. And we would hike and stop and eat lunch and have an NA meeting and then hike the rest of the way out. And I was the guy in the back, always. I'd stop 5, 6, 7 times going up the hill. Today, I'm the guy in the front, and I got my kid, my son, who's 3, who's like 30 pounds, in a backpack. And I get to the meeting place first, and we have a deal. Like, if whoever gets there, we don't start the meeting till everyone's there. So I not only get there first, or close to first, I drop my son off with others, and I go get the stragglers. And I think I've been doing that my whole life. I go get the stragglers.
Wow. Thank you so much. This has been such an incredible conversation, so rich and authentic. And I'm really grateful for our partnership with Azure Acres and all the kind words that you had about conscious recovery. I mean, it just means the world, and it's really good to see the work working. So thank you to all 3 of you for this beautiful conversation. Thanks to everybody listening and watching. And I feel like there might be another one of these in our future.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Thank you so much,
amazing.
TJ. Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Thanks,
Thank you,
Lynn.
Jeremy. Thank you, Lynn.